Today I'm trying a new indie brand. It's called Beaute and it's based out of New Zealand, which I don't think I've ever tried an indie brand from New Zealand. So this is extra exciting, and I actually didn't realize that they were based out of New Zealand until I got my tracking and noticed that it was coming out of the USA. For a few months now, I kept seeing this brand featured on my feed through the Instagram algorithm, and it piqued my interest because of course they were showing off some beautiful, shiny, shifty, sparkly eyeshadows right up my alley. So I was very interested to try them out. I was just keeping an eye out on them and seeing if there's anything that launches in the future that I'm interested in getting, and lo and behold, they announced their very first eyeshadow palette, and it's called The Legend of Land and Sea, and there's dragons on it. And I was like, yes, sign me up. This is the moment I will be trying them out. So this is their chapter 1 first palette. I'm assuming that means there's more coming. I was also intrigued because we don't really see a lot of eyeshadow palettes that detach like this. There's some brands that have done this, but not a lot of brands do this. Most of the time it's cardboard. So I really like that, and I like that this is see-through. So there's 4 magnets on each side, and I like that this is black because you really get to see the color story super clearly. And I like the color story because we have some neutrals and then blues, and I love me some blue eyeshadow, and of course it matches the theme. So I was like, yes, sign me up. I'm going to be buying this. I'm going to be trying it out. They also sell a mixing medium, so I threw that in my cart, as well as the gel primer, which I was really intrigued by. I forgot to use it on camera in this video, but I did use it to apply this look that I didn't film, unfortunately. So in total, I have tried this palette out 3 times. So let's talk about the pricing information. So the palette was $68. Right now it's showing a $69. I'm assuming that has to do with conversion rates. Mixing medium was $24, which I feel like is kind of a lot for how much you're getting. And then the gel primer is $16. But you get 1 gram of product, and it is a gel in a jar. And with things like these, they tend to dry out a lot sooner than if it's in a tube. And then I used a 10% off coupon. So in total, I paid $97.20, and the shipping was free. So I'm assuming I made some sort of a free shipping requirement. I couldn't find it on their website anywhere, so I'm assuming it must be over 90 USD. So back to the palette, there's 5 shimmer shadows and the rest are mattes, and we have kind of 2 deeper mattes and then 2 pastels and then 1 neon. And the reason I say that is because it really has that almost like glowy effect to it, and you could probably already tell from looking at the pans. There are a couple of different varying textures, with these 2 shades being the chunkiest, slightly flaky, and then these 3 being really smooth. So let's get into the detail swatches of the shimmers, and I'll show you 2 looks with that palette, and then I'll give you some of my initial thoughts at the end of the video. First 3 shades are Treasure Trove, Shimmering Scales, and Emerald Waters. You can see there's a slight difference in texture here. This one definitely being the most textured. It also feels like a little bit squishy in the pan, and it does kind of swatch. It does feel a little bit pasty as I'm swatching it, but it does smooth out completely. And then this one, ooh, this one is so pigmented, and I'm sure this one is too. Yeah, they all have a little bit so far. All 3 of these have a little bit of kind of slickness to them, which does help spread them out and smooth them out. The top shade is a beautiful gold, leaning a little bit like a darker kind of gold. And then the center shade is an iridescent multi-chrome, and it shifts bright green to blue to purple. And then the last shade is a teal black base multi-chrome that shifts all the way to a purple, like a dark purple. Super shifty. And the other 2 shades are Jungle Mirage and Mystic Haze, and this one feels the same as the very first shade in the top row, and this one feels more similar to Emerald Waters. It is very smooth, and it's definitely going to be, oh yeah, super opaque and easy to spread out. And this one does feel a little bit squishy as well, and it does feel a little bit pasty as I'm swatching it out. And both of these are for sure multi-chromes. I mean, look at that shift. So the top shade is like an olivey gold green that shifts to a bright grassy green all the way to a dark blue. And then the bottom shade is a purple that shifts. I kind of see like a little bit of like a light yellow gold and aqua as well in there. Super shifty, and they also have a little bit of sparkle to them. I prime with the About Face eyeshadow primer. I'm not going to be doing a full wear test with these, but I do want to get an idea on how these shimmers will wear. So I'm going to wear it for at least maybe an hour or 2, and if it creases within that time frame, then I'll know, and if it doesn't, then there's hope. First, taking Moonlit Lagoon, and I'm going to put that just on the outer corner and up into the crease just a little bit. And then I'm going to wipe off the brush to the best of my ability, and I'm going to take the I'm going to take Sandy Shores. The names are on the back and they're reading this way, which is interesting. I would think that they would be reading that way, but I'm taking that shade and that one's going to go right next to that blue. I see blue. These are super, super pastel. I definitely feel like these are going to be best over a lighter shade. They're not like Blend Bunny pigmented pastel shades where they have so much pigment. And then I'm just going to go in with a little bit more of this pastel blue. Again, just on this outer corner, just kind of blowing it out. And then I'm taking a Blend Bunny B3 brush and I'm picking up Deep Sea. I have to say I don't like that I have to pick up this palette every time, but it is what it is. Obviously, when you're doing your eyeshadow at home, you're not going to need to know what shade you're going in with. And I'm just kind of tapping that on this outer corner first, just to lay down the pigment. And then I'm going to go and take the brush I was using and I'm just going to start to blend that into the light blue. I haven't swatched these mattes yet, but it is looking a little bit patchy there. So I'm just going to go back in and put on some more. And I want to wipe off this brush just to make sure I'm not kind of pulling this out too far out. I feel like it's still a little patchy. It's not like too bad, but I definitely see a little bit of patchiness. I have just like the tiniest bit of fallout. It's not a big deal. But yeah, it's like, it just like is blending out. So I feel like if I really want to keep that blue there, I'm just going to have to just like keep it tapped on, if that makes sense. Like kind of do your blending and then build and kind of leave it alone. And I don't know if this is a primer, but it does seem to apply pretty thin. So I kind of wonder if that has something to do with it. For the shimmer, I'm going in with Emerald Waters. And I misted my brush with the Carla Cosmetics, what is this one called? Mist Potion. And I'm just gonna go and put this on an angle onto the outer corner. And just a little bit to the inner corner, but really keeping this out here. And just kind of layering it on top of the matte. Kind of like this. Up shimmering scales on this Refer 26 brush. And this one, it picked up really nicely, but I'm still going to mist it. I missed the first mist, so don't want to drench it too much. And then I'm just going to put that on the kind of inner lid, going up and swooping up. I feel like the yellow has completely disappeared. I can't really even see it. But I'm going to try to kind of merge them in the center here together, just going kind of back and forth between. And then I'm going to bring this down a little bit as well. I think I'm going to bring the yellow down. I do want to see like if I can just kind of pack it on there with a brush like this. This is a Zoeva brush. This is so old, but still have it. So I'm just going to pop that right in here. And underneath, and I definitely feel like packing on is the way to go, and like pack it on and do not touch it. And I'm just gonna go and like blend it in here a little bit. My eye is watering just a little bit, so it's kind of starting to bleed into the blue, so I'm just gonna go in with the blue. But yeah, there's my eye's watering, so that's unfortunate. The first finished look. For the second look, I'm going to first go in with the shade Dragon Cave, and then I'm going to use Lost Relic. And I'm probably going to do, again, like outer corner here, and then inner crease. And then I think I'm going to use, I kind of just want to use this shade right here. I feel like it's going to go really nicely together with this color story. Taking the Refer 13 brush, and I'm just putting this down. And I did prime on this eye with the Ulta eyeshadow primer. And I feel like, I don't know if it's a blue versus brown type of thing. I definitely want to try the blue on this primer now, because I feel like this is applying so much better. And I'm just going to blend this out. There really isn't a transition shade to use. I could kind of use the yellow maybe, but I feel like it's maybe just like a little too contrasty. But I mean, that applied really nicely. I'm gonna wipe off the brush and I'm gonna go in with the neon yellow. And this is gonna be a press. Oh, that is pigmented. I'm gonna bring it onto the lid as well. And actually, I'm gonna blend it just a little bit. I'm curious to see how it performs blended. And that looks really nice. That is quite the yellow. I'm gonna go in with just a little bit more, like on here, more on the lid. And I feel like I kind of blew this out a little bit too far. So I'm gonna take some setting powder on just like a clean, really fluffy brush. And I'm just gonna go over the edges of the whole look to just like feather it out a little bit more, soften it. Because like I said, I went a little too far out here for sure. I feel like I don't really do this eyeshadow shape. I'm not hating it, but I feel like I need to kind of clean this up a little bit because it is like kind of dragging my eye down a little bit. So I'm gonna use my finger and I'm gonna use the shade Jungle Mirage. From my angle, it looks super green. And then from this angle, it looks really olivey. So when I was looking at it, I saw this. It's super, super beautiful, very smooth, so smooth, look at that. And I'm gonna put that all over the lid, but I'm gonna really keep it on just the mobile lid and not really bring it up into my inner crease. Just like maybe a tiny bit, but I don't want any kind of too much darkness in there. But this shade is so pretty. I definitely feel like I had a better time with this eye look than this one. I definitely want to use the blue again, and I want to use it with the Ulta primer and not have my eye water. Here's the second finished look. I did clean it up here just a little bit for the shape. So the gel primer, I will keep you updated on my thoughts on it. I did use it for this look, and so far it's doing a really, really great job because this is the flaky shadow in the palette, and it's doing a really great job. I have maybe like one little piece here that just kind of recently fell down, but I've been wearing this for a couple hours and I also have no visible creasing. Even if I look really up close, it looks really nice and super shiny. So far my impression is really good, and I'm excited to try this out with a bunch of other eyeshadows. Onto the palette, keeping in mind that I've used it 3 times. Now this is a brand new brand to me, mattes and shimmers. So this is maybe just a little bit more of a first impressions, but I don't really tend to change my thoughts a lot on palettes after using them 3 times at least. First, the shimmers, they're really beautiful. There's 2 chunky shadows that I definitely recommend using your finger actually to apply. When I did this look off camera, I used this shade and I was putting it over the gel primer, and I felt like I was having a harder time applying it with a brush, mostly because it was applying a little bit more chunky and it just wasn't really smoothing out and melting in like I wanted it to. So I ended up going in with my finger to really be able to control how much I'm putting down and how much I'm smoothing it out, which is definitely in part a preference thing and the kind of look that you're going for. Overall, if you've been on my channel and you've watched my videos, you know I don't prefer chunky shadows, but as long as they smooth out, I don't have an issue using my finger to really get them to smooth out, because I mean, it is very beautiful and it's almost like very glistening. You can tell that the shadow still has a larger particle size even after it's smoothed out. So it's ultra sparkly, and so is this shade right here because it is also a little bit chunkier. So these 2 are like the most sparkly shades, while the rest of these 3 are really, really smooth. I did wear the 2 looks that I did originally for a couple hours, and I had the smallest, tiniest hint of a little bit of wear in my crease when I had this shade on, but not these 2 shades on the other lid. So that was definitely a good sign. I was a little bit worried after I swatched these that they did feel a little bit creamy, but so far so good, and especially really impressed with this shade. Again, I've had this look on for a couple hours, and usually if something's going to crease like really bad on me, it's going to crease within 30 minutes or an hour. So for this to be wearing so well is definitely very exciting. So far I'm really enjoying the shimmers. That being said, the biggest con for me personally, and this is just purely because I have tried a lot of eyeshadow and I have a lot of multi-chromes in my collection, I do have to say that I have all of these shimmers already in my collection. That is definitely not the case for everybody. So onto the mattes. This is where I feel like I was a little bit let down. I don't think that there's consistency in textures in between all these mattes. Specifically speaking, these two pastels, they feel a little bit harder pressed, and they are super hard to build up to get them to look like this on the lid. I feel like I would have to use a white eyeshadow primer, and I just feel like this is going to be really hard to show up on anyone that has a medium deeper skin tone. And I have matte eyeshadows just like this in my collection from Blend Money, and they perform really great. So I know it's possible to formulate these level of pastels that have quite a bit of opacity to them. The two mattes I enjoy the most in here are these two because they're both very pigmented and they blended really nicely. Overall, I would say with the exception of these two shades, there is definitely quite a bit of kick up. So kind of think of like Terra Moons or the Clionadh matte, something like that, where you get a lot of kick up, so you get a lot of pigment. The problem in this case, specifically with this blue shade, because I have tried it twice now and on two different eyeshadow primers, and I'm still running into the same issue. Packs on beautifully, but it does not want to stick down to my lid, and it blends away and it gets patchy, and I have to keep building on top of it. And then it gets to the point, because it is so powdery, that it just doesn't want to layer anymore because there's already so much powder down, and that powder doesn't want to really stick down. I feel like I just had a really hard time both the times that I use this matte, so not the biggest fan, and I definitely have plenty of mattes that are like this that I really enjoy. Yes, the shimmers are beautiful. This is jam-packed full of multi-chromes and beautiful shades. Overall, I feel like personally, if this palette was less than $68, because this is their first palette and the first matte, so I'm curious to see if they do anything with the mattes or if they keep this formula. Maybe it's just me and everyone's going to love the mattes and they're not going to do anything with them. Regardless, I'm excited to see a New Zealand indie brand thriving, and I'm still definitely intrigued by them. So let me know in the comments below if you know of this brand, if you tried anything from them. I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you like this kind of content, indie makeup, super shiny, sparkly eyeshadows, swatched, tutorials, then definitely check out some of my other videos up on the screen. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.